Hey guys, in this video we're going to be checking out the Slim X frame from FlexRC. This is a variation on the Ascent frame. This is a 2.5-inch frame, ultralight, and very skinny arms as you can see here. It is a true X instead of the normal H-style frame that the Ascent normally comes in, but it's got the sort of shrunken down, I guess not as tall cage here. And this is meant for ultralight builds, and you'll be shocked at how light this is. You'll see in a second here. I'll give you some measurements, but it's basically got a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can put this together. And if you look at the motor mount cutouts here, there's ones for the 3-screw motors and the 11.0x motors, the 9mm and the 7mm spacing. And this particular frame, Dimitri custom cut this for me so that I could use the 0806 motors, which has an 8mm spacing and 3-screw hole mounts. So the one you're looking at here is a one-off. I believe the actual production Slim X will only work for 07 0X motors and 11 0X motors, so just keep that in mind. The reason I asked for a custom frame is that I do have some 0806 motors that I'm going to actually do a rebuild of this at some point down the road as a 2S, and this one is actually a 1S. And if you saw from one of my haul videos, it's been a while. I've had this little board here for maybe a month. I haven't done anything with it. This is the secret to getting this ultralight. This is an all-in-one board, obviously for brushless motors. It's based on the Omnibus F3 Target. It's got an F3 flight controller with a Betaflight OSD, and it's got a 4-in-1 EC all in one single board. I think it's a 16 by 16 hole mounting board, but obviously you can see that it's quite a bit bigger than 16 by 16. Obviously, to accommodate the ESCs, it's 5 amp BLHeli S ESCs. I believe it bursts up to 6 amps for up to 10 seconds, I believe. But yeah, it's amazing. Single board. It has 4 ESCs plus the flight controller and a Betaflight OSD all in a very small board. I think the board only weighs like 2 grams or something like that. It's pretty ridiculous. A couple other parts. I got a FlySky receiver here. That's the RX2A Pro. It's the smallest, latest one I could find. And then I'm just using an all-in-one camera here. This is actually the part from the Aurora 100, I believe. It's an old part. I had this lying around. It's because it has the 4 wire leads so that I could wire it up to the OSD here. And this board's tiny. The whole thing is tiny, but you're going to need some pretty good soldering skills to put this together, because these are some tiny contacts here. And the motors are kind of interesting. These are actually, I don't think that they're selling these anymore. They're 1102 16,500 kV, and they're from FlexRC. I bought these way back when I built the Nano X, which is this motor based on it's like a 1.5-inch prop, and I wasn't too impressed with the power of that motor on that little tiny prop. So, and I was also in 1S, so I was saving up this motor for a special build. And I know someone, Slither XXX, something like that, one of the subscribers kept asking me about this motor for the longest time. I said, well, I'm waiting for a specific build to put this motor into, because it's going to go into an ultralight 1S build, and I wanted to use the 65mm gem fan props. And I'm not really sure what the actual amp draw is in the air. I know that it's pretty high on the thrust stand, so I was a little concerned that with this large prop on 1S, with such a high kV motor, that these 5 amp ESCs would probably die. And I've had a few flights, I mean not a ton, I'd say about 4 or 5, and so far so good. It hasn't had any flips of death or crashes or anything like that. So yeah, I think they're okay, because I think these gem fan props are very efficient in flight. It doesn't provide a ton of power. It's pretty adequate for cruising around, and I get pretty good flight times. I'm using the 450 milliamp hour high volt GNB battery with the PH 2.0 connector. getting about 3.5 to 4 minutes on this battery, so that's pretty good flight times. And the reason that this is super impressive is that, look at the weight of this thing, and you're going to be kind of surprised. This thing, this is obviously without the battery. It's 37.5 grams with fully built without the battery. Now, just to give you some perspective here, if we look at something that I built about a year and a half ago, this is a brushed build based on the same props, 65mm jump fan props with the 8.5mm SpinTech motors. This comes in at 44 grams. So just to give you an idea, back when we were flying the micro brushed, when there was like all the rage, when brushed was the rage, remember that, those days? This is how much things would typically weigh, around 40 to 50 grams. And we thought that was pretty light, but now we've got this setup here with an 1102 motor, brushless, pretty similar specs in terms of, like, you know, FPV system, receiver, all that, and it's quite a bit lighter. And I'm also using a lighter battery too. I mean, I'm using this 450 high volt, whereas back in those brush days I was using one of those 1S 650 regular lipos, which were quite a bit heavier. So things have come quite a way. Now, in terms of longevity, I'm not 100% sure how long the ECs will last, given the amp draw of these brushless motors, but I'm fairly confident that as long as I'm not doing full throttle punch outs for the entire flight, I should be okay. And you'll see in the flight demo, I'm not really pushing it that much. I would consider this something like a park flyer, you know, leave it in your car, fly it at lunch type of thing, not a performance demon. So anyway, I know that a lot of people were complaining on Facebook that this thing will snap in a crash, and yeah, you know, probably in a really hard crash onto concrete from a drop from, say, 30-40 feet, you're probably going to break an arm if you know, happen to land on it at a certain, you know, critical angle. But this thing, you know, you have to remember, even, yeah, let me see, with the battery, I think it's still like 50 grams. I mean, I don't think that, you know, throw the battery on here. Yeah, it's 50.5 grams with the battery. So assuming that you have a failsafe or something and you fall out of the sky, land on a sidewalk, how much actual damage are you going to sustain with this little amount of mass? You know, it's obviously nothing is indestructible. You could break anything, but you know, for me, you know, I'm willing to live with a little bit. I'm willing to sacrifice durability to get the ultralight experience here. You get like these kind of components and such a simple build in this kind of frame. So that trade-off is worth it to me. Whether it's worth it to you or not, I guess that's for you to decide. But yeah, this is, I think, probably the most optimal 1S brushless build that you can build currently. I really am not a big fan of the 07, 03, 07, 05 builds with the 55mm propeller. Those motors are very noisy, and I don't particularly think that they have that much power. The 1102s definitely have more power than those, and I like the fact that this is a little bit bigger frame, a little bit bigger size. I have more flexibility in the build here. So, like, for example, I'm going to fly this for a little while, then a little later I'm going to tear this down and I'm going to do a 2S build with an 0806 motor, and then I'm going to try another 2S build with like maybe an 1102, maybe the 12,500 kV motor or the 11,500 kV motor, something like that, and then we can kind of compare how the flight characteristics are from 1S to 2S, and also when you change the FPV system. So like in this ultralight build here at 37 grams, I'm using this, you know, all-in-one CMOS camera to save weight, but obviously here you can see that this frame style can take a micro CCD camera like Microsoft or Foxshare Aero Micro, and ultimately that's when I go to 2S I'm going to do that. The reason I went to this because I'm running on 1S, I would have to add another 5-volt regulator somewhere to support the camera, because the BEC on this little tiny board here is only have enough power to support the receiver and this all-in-one camera. If you put a full-size, or not full-size, or micro CCD camera with a video transmitter and the receiver, is going to overtax the BEC and you're going to have some issues. So if you added on the 1S setup, if you had the micro CCD camera, a video transmitter, plus another 5-volt regulator in here, that's probably going to bump up the weight to the point where maybe these 5 amp BECs aren't going to like powering up these 1102 motors. So I wanted to keep things as light as possible. This is why I built it the way I built it here. Anyway, the frame itself here that you're seeing is probably not going to be up for sale yet at the time of the publishing of this video. It may or may not be. If as soon as that link does come out, I'll put it in the description below, but it'll be to be determined at this point. I'll put the links to all the other parts here in the description, and then this will just be the first of probably several videos on this particular frame. I'm going to be doing different configurations and such, and so we'll see what the weights of each of these different configurations are like and the performance, and we can kind of compare the videos as I build them and tear them down. So hopefully this will give you guys an idea of what ultralight builds can turn out to be and whether or not we want to go in that direction. So I guess we'll find out, and I don't have all the answers, and this is kind of why I'm doing all these experiments. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful and interesting. If you do, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.
If you awaken from this illusion and you understand that black implies white, self implies other, life implies death, or shall I say, death implies life, you can feel yourself not as a stranger in the world, not as something that has arrived here by fluke, but you can begin to feel your own existence as absolutely fundamental. What you are basically, deep, deep down, far, far in, is simply the fabric and structure of existence itself. Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream, and that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time. And you would naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure you could conceive. And after several nights of 75 years of total pleasure each, you would say, well, that was pretty great. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. And you would dig that and come out of that and say, wow, that was a close shave, wasn't it? Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now.